All right, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into 4 incredible case files where beloved pets became the ultimate physical, behavioral, and forensic witnesses. We often think of our pets as just cuddly companions, right? But today, we're going to look at the undeniable proof that they are so much more than that.
You know that old saying, if these walls could talk? Well, investigators ask themselves that every single day. But what if the walls didn't have to talk? Because behind closed doors, our pets see absolutely everything. And as we'll discover today, they have unprecedented and honestly sometimes shocking ways of speaking for those who no longer can.
So let's jump right into Case File 01, the Cockatoo's Last Stand. Our story opens back in December 2001 in Dallas, Texas. It starts with a guy named Kevin Butler. Now, Kevin was a huge lover of stray animals, but his absolute best friend was a fiercely loyal, 18-inch white-crested cockatoo aptly named Bird. But when investigators arrived at Kevin's house, they walked into a tragedy. Kevin had been murdered in his totally ransacked living room, and heartbreakingly, Bird was found deceased in the kitchen. It was obvious a massive struggle had taken place, but investigators noticed something astonishing. This brave bird's beak and claws were absolutely covered in blood. And the blood smear all across the crime scene, on a light switch, on knife handles. It didn't belong to Kevin, and it didn't belong to Bird, which told them one massive detail. The killer hadn't walked away unscathed. Bird had put up a serious fight.
Now, this is where the DNA completely flips the script. At first, police zeroed in on an obvious suspect, Johnny Cerna. He was a fired employee who lived barely 100 yards away and had a fresh grudge. Makes perfect sense, right? But when the lab results finally came back months later, the DNA didn't match Johnny at all. It matched Daniel Torres, Johnny's 30-year-old half-brother. Daniel had zero documented history with Kevin, but his blood, the blood collected right off the cockatoo's beak, perfectly matched the scene. It proved, without a shadow of a doubt, that Torres was the one who attacked Kevin, all while fighting off a terrifying counterattack from Bird. Torres even admitted later that he actually had to use a fork to get the bird to stop attacking his head.
Bird literally gave his life defending his owner. In the ultimate act of loyalty, this amazing cockatoo collected the exact biological trace needed to secure capital murder convictions and life sentences for both men involved. Bird left a permanent mark on his killers, making absolutely sure they couldn't just walk away.
Moving on to Case File 02, the Golden Retriever's Guide.
Okay, let's fast forward to South Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania in 2018. Police there were thrown into this wildly chaotic 24-hour window. The timeline of how this unfolded is just wild. At 3 a.m., a panicked stray golden retriever named Joe wanders into a local mini-mart. By 4 a.m., police follow the address on Joe's collar to take him home, only to discover an open door and his owner, Fred Boot, tragically murdered inside. Now jump to 1 p.m. A local arson is reported where someone clearly tried to destroy a pile of clothing and shoes in a fire. And then, later that same afternoon, a guy walks into a hospital with badly bleeding hands. Right around the exact same time, a local mother reports her 14-year-old daughter missing. Police were suddenly juggling 4 seemingly disconnected crises in a single day. And the crazy part? It was all triggered by one panicked dog looking for help.
So Fred Boot was this well-loved guy in the community, making the motive totally baffling. The only things taken were his phone and a $20 bill. But remember that arson we just talked about? Investigators found that the burning shoes perfectly matched bloody footprints leading right out of Fred's bedroom. And that guy who walked into the hospital with the knife wounds? His name was Ronaldo Marcado, and it turns out he was the boyfriend of the missing 14-year-old girl. By tracing those bloody footprints to the arson and then tying that fire to the guy with the knife wounds trying to flee to New York, police managed to corner Marcado before he could escape the country.
Think about it for a second. Without Joe, the golden retriever, escaping to get help, the killer absolutely would have vanished before the crime was even discovered. Joe's instinct to seek out people, to guide police back to that completely unrecognized crime scene in the middle of the night, is the sole reason Fred Boot's killer is serving life in prison today. Joe broke the silence.
Now, let's look at Case File 03, the Parrot's Tragic Echo.
We are in San Fernando, Argentina, and the year is 2018. Police investigating the brutal murder of Elizabeth Ellie Toledo uncovers some genuinely chilling audio evidence. Just picture this. A police officer is standing guard over Ellie's lifeless body, waiting for the forensics team, when he is stunned to hear a woman screaming from inside the room. She's screaming, "Oh, please let me go. Oh, no." He rushes over to check, only to realize the sound is coming from Ellie's cage. It was her green parrot, Pachuli, shrieking those exact words at full volume.
Now, your first thought is probably that the bird just repeated what it heard during the murder, right? Well, here's the thing. 150 is the maximum vocabulary limit for most parrots. What that means is a bird of this species only commits phrases to memory through massive, repeated exposure. It takes a very long time for them to learn a complex sentence like that.
So the devastating reality here is that the parrot hadn't just recorded her final moments, it had memorized the tragic, desperate pleas of Ellie's everyday life. Ellie had to cry out those agonizing words dozens of times across multiple weeks for Pachuli to so perfectly mimic her despair. Another neighbor even testified to hearing the bird say, "Why did you hit me?" It painted this horrifying picture of domestic abuse that had gone completely unreported until now.
Let's break down how this investigation actually played out. While Pachuli provided the horrifying context of Ellie's daily abuse, it was direct biological DNA that ultimately closed the case. Miguel Roland, her partner, sat in pretrial detention for 3 years before being totally cleared. A third housemate had a verified alibi, but George Alvarez, an older housemate, well, he was identified by an eyewitness and his DNA perfectly matched the victim. He ended up confessing and was put away for life. The parrot obviously couldn't testify in court, but it carried the only existing recording of what Ellie's life actually sounded like inside that house.
And finally, Case File 04, The Cat's Historic DNA.
For this one, we're traveling to a snowy Prince Edward Island in Canada, back in 1994. A mother of 5 named Shirley Duguay vanished. She left behind absolutely nothing but an abandoned car and a driver's seat pillow that was completely soaked in her blood. Police immediately suspected her abusive ex-partner of 15 years, Douglas Beamish. But he denied everything. And without a body, the police had literally no way to prove a murder had even happened, let alone tie Beamish to it.
So they launched this massive island-wide search spanning hundreds of miles. They find a bloody shovel. Then, 15 miles away, they find a plastic bag containing bloody sneakers and a men's leather jacket stained with Shirley's blood. The jacket clearly belonged to a man, but Beamish, of course, completely denied it was his. However, inside the jacket lining, investigators found 20 brittle, white animal hairs. Later, an investigator is interviewing Beamish at his parents' house, and he notices a pure white cat named Snowball rubbing against his leg, leaving identical white hairs. Right then and there, a radical, completely unheard of forensic theory was born.
But here's the problem. How do you actually prove a cat hair belongs to a specific cat? It had never been done in a criminal case before, ever. Investigators tracked down Dr. Stephen O'Brien, a geneticist. They looked at those 20 hairs, and only one of them actually had a root attached, meaning they had exactly one shot at extracting DNA. But they did it. They successfully extracted it, compared it directly with Snowball's blood, and got a match. But to make sure this groundbreaking science would actually hold up in court, they had to test 20 random island cats, just to ensure the isolated local cat population wasn't heavily inbred, which would have made the match completely meaningless. The mathematical certainty they achieved was absolutely staggering. To put it into perspective, the probability of that single white hair belonging to any cat on that island, other than Snowball, was 1 in 45 million. The science was rock solid. Because of a few shedding hairs from a household cat, Shirley's killer was finally tied directly to the bloody jacket. When Shirley's body was eventually found, the missing persons case became a murder case, and Douglas Beamish became the first person in the history of the world convicted of murder based on animal DNA. A historic, game-changing moment in forensic science, and it was all thanks to Snowball the cat.
All right, wrapping up. More than just companions.
We really have to recognize that these animals are far more than just companions. From physical defense with a cockatoo, to behavioral tracking with a golden retriever, audio mimicry from a parrot, and groundbreaking biology from a white cat, these stories fundamentally change how we view the animals sharing our homes. So I have to ask, will you ever look at your pets the same way again, knowing they are fiercely loyal sentinels capable of securing justice from beyond a grave? They see what we see, they hear what we hear, and sometimes they are the very last ones left to tell the tale. Thanks for exploring this fascinating explainer with me. I hope it leaves you marveling at the incredible, silent witnesses sleeping right at your feet. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you in the next one.